To begin with, let me share with you a few words about how ADB invests in Nepal. The key, I think, we have done here focus quite much on the infrastructure. If we talk about the number, I think accounts for about 70% of our support. So in infrastructure investment. First of all, to address the bottleneck of the economy. So this is the, I think, our first strategy, focus on Nepal in the investment. We invested on energy, transport, water supply, and sanitation, and also education and agriculture and irrigation. Secondly, I think is to bring about transformative impacts into Nepal. ADB actually supported a number of national pride projects, such as Melamchi water supply. So if the water can get into the Kathmandu, I think it's a huge kind of impact for Kathmandu. And also, like what I mentioned yesterday, the Gautam Buddha International Airport. Actually, 2 days ago, I visited there. It's at the very beginning supposed to be a regional airport, but idea comes to make it become the international airport. So many airlines, international airlines will be there, and a huge kind of tourism would be attracted, and the private sector will be attracted. So I think it is a very good national pride project. Thirdly, I think to promote inclusive and also balanced growth. We invested in basic needs for people, such as rural roads, water supply and sanitation in the small towns, also microfinance, and also earthquake damaged schools. I also visited one of them, so it's very well been built. And also some investments on the climate change adaptation and the mitigation. It's very related to the issues here in Nepal, so very important.
A very warm welcome to this session on sharing of experiences and aspirations of investing in Nepal. Both as Chairman of Nepal Infrastructure Bank and as Vice President of CNI, I want to do a very special warm welcome to all our foreign investors who've come across to Nepal. And hopefully in this session, we'd like to share a story, a story about what we're doing in Nepal, how FDI is performing in Nepal. And I'm looking forward to sharing this story with you guys and engaging with that in the coming sessions. So let me start with setting the context a bit. I think FDI, to us, FDI investment in Nepal is one of South Asia's best kept secrets, right? And today we want to spill that secret. On one hand, if you look at the track record of FDI in Nepal, 30 years, the top 20 investments, agnostic of any sector, we're not picking any sector, financial, FMCG, steel, cement, the returns are astronomical. So returns over 15, 20, 30 years, the annual returns in Nepal for FDI sector, agnostic of any particular investment, is 30, 40% annualized, which means over 20, 30%, 20, 30 years, returns of 10,000% are the norm, not the exception. Just to give you an example, when I was driving over this morning, I looked up 2 life insurance companies who started business in Nepal about 2000, so about 18, 19 years ago. They both invested about $2 million in the country, right? So about $2.2 million. One of those companies now is worth $200 million and gives an annual dividend payout of $5 million. The other one is worth $400 million and is annually paying out $10, $15 million. So on average, a $2 million investment in the life insurance sector 20 years ago is now worth $300 million, an annual dividend payout of $10 to $15 million. Now that's not just the life insurance sector. Cutting across all sectors, if you ask any foreign investor in the last 20 years, that's the story for everybody. And we have some of those investors on stage today, and hopefully you'll hear from them. But the kind of returns we see in Nepal are astronomical, and they cut across all sectors. We're not aware of any single large foreign investment in Nepal which has not succeeded. Now you find a country globally which can show that kind of track record, and it'll be very hard to find. And that's a story we find that in Nepal, unfortunately, due to media or due to us not being able to share those facts and figures, that's a story which really is not known by investors globally. And hopefully in this session today, we'll try and bring out that story and share real hard data on what's happened with FDI in the past. Coming back to Nepal, and we've heard over the last day and during the course of today, that Nepal offers unique advantages. I mean, we've got our locational advantage between two big economies. We've got a very sizable population, especially when we come from India or China and we're a little bit placed in between. People look at Nepal and often think of Nepal as a small country. But the reality is we're among the top 50 countries in the world in terms of population, with the same size as Malaysia or Canada. And our youth demographic is very strong, which means consumption, demand, productivity will remain strong for the decades to come. Now that kind of unique demographic is pretty sizable on a global scale. From that perspective,
I think Nepal is the best place in the globe to invest, especially talking about the private sector perspective from the Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is the apex body of the private sector also, and we have network not only within Nepal, but we have network outside all around the world with the chambers also and with the private sector. So I think this is the right time now, because now we have a stable government, which is our biggest asset. And another thing, like when we used to go and interact with our delegates, private sector, outside Nepal, like they would question us, like what is the political situation, how's the energy supply, what is the labor, situation there, what is the policies. And I think now, after a long, almost for 2 decades, the private sector of Nepal, they were having a lot of challenges. But now we have a stable government, and the government is only gearing up for economic prosperity. Their main agenda, main vision is how to do economic development in the country. So I think now even Nepal has gone into federalism. Just before me, the keynote speaker from the ADP, he also mentioned that we have 3 layers of government, especially the federal government. We have 7 states, and there are a lot of things to offer from the local government, from the federal government also. So Nepal being a developing country or underdeveloped country, I think we have tremendous opportunities also. Because if you go to developed country, like there's no, you see hardly any opportunities. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in different sectors, like talking about government is coming up with big mega project on infrastructures, a railway network, a roadway network, and also international airport also, and big hydros also, and IT sector also. So I think politically, if you say it's a right time to invest. And we have another plus point. What we have is we have a young human capital. When a lot of countries are facing the grey economy, I think we have youth to be involved in development also. And Nepal has a very rich biocity. We have like high altitude to the Tarai region, where it's almost like a sea level. So we have all kind of vegetable, agro-product, medical herbs, everything all over the season also. And of course, it's situated between 2 largest economy, India and China. And we have a special agreement, trade agreement with India also. Like the production which is done in Nepal, we have 0 tariff to send it to India. And even China has offered almost 88,000 product as a 0 tariff. So I think we have advantage for a bigger market also. And if you talk about tourism destination, I think we have one of the best tourism destination, the birthplace of Buddha, and religious tourism. The high altitude offers flora, fauna also, a lot of culture, diversity also, jungle safari, and a lot of things in tourism sector also. And another thing, policies. I think yesterday the Prime Minister and even the Finance Minister mentioned that a lot of policies has been amended now, and especially the foreign direct investment policy, public-private like partnership policies, and even the investment board. They are gearing up for one window system. So we don't have to go to different ministries and all. So a lot of projects will be addressed in investment board, and some of the project will be addressed at the related ministries also. And if we compare, and I think there's a lot of multinational companies from the financial sector, Standard Chartered Bank, and even manufacturing sector from Unilever, they are here. Of course, they are going to share the experience. When we see the different sectors of multinational companies, from manufacturing to finance, from telecom to other sectors, I think they are really making the profit. Even during when we have a political disturbance disturbance in the country, those time also they were making profit. Then you can imagine when the situation is so good in Nepal, you know. So I think this is the right time, and being a federation, being the part of the private sector of Nepal, which I think we are working very closely with the government. We represent almost all the committees of the government also, and having a very good network with all the chambers around the world, we can put a word to them. We organize B2B meetings, seminars, and discussion also. And a very strong point what we have is we lobby the government, because especially on the policy reform, because before doing this investment summit also, Honorable Finance Minister, who is the coordinator of this summit also, so we, the private sector, are also partner in this summit.
As Bhavani Rana and all participants in the summit already told, that there are many opportunities in Nepal. So I am not going to talk about the opportunities, but I have some requests. It is said that only there is no problem and the best place in the world where you are not there. If you are there, if you are working there, if you are living there, you will have small problems every day, every hour, every moment. So please don't leave it, solve it, but don't talk too much about the problems. Second thing that I would like to especially to encourage our new investors, to our local investors and foreign investors who has done pretty much investment in Nepal, please do share your success publicly. What is happening now, we are talking very loudly about all the problems publicly, but our own success we are not talking. So please, now from today, take oath that we will talk about our success loudly, and publicly about our problem we will talk privately.
Held broadly, 30% of our stock is held locally. We've got a broad base of shareholders of approximately 140,000 shareholders in the country. And our reason to exist in Nepal is really two things. One is to provide the international connectivity both ways into Nepal. And today, without naming any clients, we have 13 of our key global clients here in the audience who are here at our invitation, and I hope they'll find that the time spent in Nepal will really give them some value and deep insight, because there's been such an open amount of sharing from such senior policymakers and business leaders from Nepal that I think it gives foreign investors a lot of insight. So, just to reiterate, 33 years in Nepal, we've never had a problem with either a regulator, the finance ministry, for the public offering, repatriation of dividends. So it should be a straightforward endorsement to what Dr. Mahato mentioned. One of the other issues which is really heartening in Nepal as a foreign investor is there's a great two-way dialogue between policymakers and international investors. They're easily accessible, again to Dr. Mahato's point, they're easily accessible, they are supportive, they try and understand the issues that we feel. Now we have very stringent compliance standards globally, yet we've been able to operate highly successfully in Nepal, which reflects the fact that foreign direct investors can navigate Nepal successfully, and the whole story of everything is corrupt and everything is Ranojos, it frankly doesn't bite. We've operated successfully. We have the same global standards for opening a bank account, whether in Nepal or anywhere else in the world, and we have a lot and we have a lot of bank accounts. Not enough, but a lot.
What is important for the country to realize is your own potential and your own place in the world. And I think what I agree with the speakers before me is that never have we approached the government and they have turned us down. And I think that's a sign of humility, because all countries make mistakes, all countries have problems, But if you are ready to work with the industry directly to solve those problems, I'm sure we'll together solve it. We have invested significantly last year in putting up a new ERP. We implemented SAP. We have implemented our best-in-class distributor system. We have invested around 32 crores in our CAPEX expansion, and we will continue to do that. My only request to the people, the government and the industry bodies is give us stability and give us breathing space. Lead everything else to perfect competition and we will be in a better place.
India has been cooperating and associating with Nepal with its development since long, and we are a public sector company in India, Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited. We are in basically in the hydropower sector. Now we have diversified into all sectors of energy, whether it's hydro, wind, solar, thermal, transmission, all sectors of energy. Any investor like us is guided by primarily 2 R's. First is return. Whatever investment an investor is going to make, what is the waiting period for returns? How much returns investor is going to get from his investment? And second is the risk or the uncertainties associated with the investment in any foreign country. Like returns, in hydro sector, the projects have very long gestation period. The returns come after say 15 or 20 years. I am investing in Nepal for the last 10 years. We were allotted this around 900 megawatt project in 2008. After doing all the due diligence, survey investigation, preparation of DPR, then project development agreement was signed, and finally the project was started, construction was started last year in 2018. I am investing here for the last 10 years. So far I have invested about 800 crore rupees. But I will get returns say after 5 or 6 years, say total after 15 years. So far I have contributed directly to the exchequer of the government of Nepal more than 100 crore rupees. And in the days to come I will make an investment of 11,000 crore rupees in the next 4-5 years. But I will get returns after say 5 or 6 years.
So as a president of CNI, Anuj and I work together. As you see that we have had many common similarities, and we discuss quite a lot about the opportunities in the country, the challenges that we face. Dr. Mahato is here. I will share you a very interesting data about my colleague who is on the left of this hall, Mr. Assis, his company. The last trading day was Thursday, day before yesterday. His company traded about 9,300 in the market, and there are buyers, there are no sellers. A company which is a manufacturing company established about 27 years ago. Probably they started their production 26 years ago, had brought a couple of products when they started the business. And if you see into arithmetics, how much is that? 18,300% of appreciation in 27 years time. 18,300% of the market cap. And last year they distributed dividend of roughly about 700%. At good times they used to distribute 1,400, 1,300% dividend per year. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are an investor from other parts of the world, these are the stories. Ask my company. I produce pharmaceutical products. It's a very competitive business. We have a very open economic policy in Nepal. We allow import at a very low import duties because we are an export country to import.
We've been working here for a very long time. We invest a lot as you mentioned, we just increased 2010 to 2014. The annual average is about 250 million, but now it's about ADB is about 600 million. So you know it's like a double. So it's going to be increased. But the key is that we invested on roads, we invested on the energy, and also invested on schools. So I just tried to take my notebook. The day before yesterday, I visited the earthquake affected school called the Sanju Niwa in the Dulikel, that one. Yeah, I do see a lot of kids there. They study there, so very younger generation. My idea is that you know, we invested on infrastructure, energy, school, and TWET, training a lot of people here. But what's the value there? So this is, I think. So we need the private investment. So we need you come to use those kind of routes. You use the energies we work together to generate. Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister yesterday mentioned, currently roughly it's about 1 gigawatts here. And next year will be 3 years will be, in 3 years will be 3 gigawatts. In 10 years will be 10 gigawatts. So this is all the efforts we are here trying to do that. But some maybe in the future will export it to the outside. But I do hope all the energy generated can be utilized by ourselves domestically. So can be utilized by the private investment. So this is a foundation. This is the value, the meaning as the development partner. So we work here. So with that, I do hope. I believe this is an excellent opportunity, like all the colleagues here are talking about, excellent opportunity for private sector to come in to invest here. Three quicker things. One, come early, or as early as possible. Second, aiming for the longer term. Yeah. The third, don't need to worry about too much challenges during your investment. Even challenges here, just get more talks with the government, more the federal and local governments, and work together to improve the ease in doing business here. Then we'll be paid for the way for the future, for the prosperity Nepal. Happy Nepali. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chen. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, we're getting to the last end of the session. I wish we had more time to go back to these speakers, but you know, I've been reminded that I need to complete on time. So I'll just try and sum up a few thoughts. And you know, one of the things I think from a technical perspective that I would like to share is that from a currency perspective, also Nepal is pretty unique. We've been pegged to the INR. The peg is about 25 years old, very stable, and that allows us to benefit from the stability of the INR. So that's one big benefit for investors. For Indian investors, practically you can say there's little or no risk. And even for global investors, you can use the INR as a proxy, you can create synthetic hedges, you get proxy hedges. And the Nepalese Finance Ministry and the central bank is also working on a hedging framework very quickly to bring out from a hedging perspective. So that kind of currency stability which Nepal offers, I think, for the economy of its size is pretty unique compared to other peer groups that we have. The other thing from a technical perspective, these economies normally come under pressure because of inflation. You know, that's a typical challenge a lot of these LDCs you know, face. In the case of Nepal, because we have access to India's supply chain, right? So about 70%, 68% of our CPI basket can theoretically come from India, you know, which is food, textiles, etc., which, you know, obviously we will be linked to the India inflation cycle. Out of the balance 32%, almost 18 to 20% sits within the government space, which is electricity, oil, utilities, and so forth. So we have a lot of resistance from inflation or hyperinflation of any kind. We almost have a hard constraint on inflation, which is India +1. So if you think of the economy which has strong currency stability and strong inflation measures, you're protected from any sort of, you know, sudden or force majeure or economic meltdown, as may be said. Nepal also is very strong on macroeconomic fundamentals. Typically in the World Economic Forum, when they do the reports for global measures, On the macro vector, Nepal is 32 out of 144, right? So we are healthier than most economies in South Asia on a macro level. So from a macro overall sustainable basis, you are technically protected from the currency. You've got technical protection against inflation, and we've got very strong macro fundamentals. And again, we've got 40, 50, 60 years of track record to show that we've been very stable as economy, never had any challenges. So the big 3 or 4 or 5 themes that I'd like to kind of summarize from what the speakers have shared. First of all, we've had a great track record, right? 30 years of great investments. We've heard some mind-boggling numbers, 1,500% dividends, $800,000 being transformed to $1.5 billion in 8-9 years. I mean, these are kind of numbers which are hard to believe, but they're backed by real data. And these are not exceptions. It's not that we've picked 1 or 2 investments from 20 or 30. These numbers can be applied to any investment. You pick any of the top 20, 30 investments, that's the number that's being shared. So clearly the track record speaks for itself, data speaks for itself. There is no doubt about the performance that Nepal has had. We heard straight from SCB, Unilever, some of the people on the dais, any myths about the environment are all myths, right? We've dispelled all those myths. It's a great environment, very, very easy, agile government, absolutely friendly, regulatory friendly, no challenges, no repatriation issues. So any confusion there is, I hope we can dispel, because these are investors who've been here 27 years, 33 years, absolutely no problem, right? So the track record, and from an environment perspective, we don't have any challenges. The strong consumption curve, right? So we talked about the demographics of the country. A large population, very young population, median age of 22. We've got great university graduates coming out, good human capital. So the access to human capital is very good. Niruk talked about the digitalization and how he sees digital as the next frontier that Nepal is accessing. And with digitalization, what access is going to improve dramatically, right? So those are some of the kind of main themes that's coming up from the demographic landscape. On the hydro space, Mr. Sharma shared that just by harnessing the hydro potential of Nepal, right, in the next 10, 15 years, just simple arithmetic is we'll grow our per capita 3 to 4 times. 3 to 4 times in 10 years, right? Now that's like 15, 17% per year growth just based on hydro. Now if you add tourism, you add agriculture, you add any of these sectors where Nepal has tremendous potential, I think the big challenge Nepal is going to have is the economy is just going to burn, it's going to overheat, right? So this is the time to enter. The economy is fundamentally sound. We've heard directly from the Honorable Prime Minister, we've heard from the great leaders of our country, really where we are headed. So from a leadership perspective, from an opportunity perspective, the growth is going to be very, very, very fast. I think one of the other themes that's coming across now is that, look, historically, we've had great success, great numbers, but probably the FDI has not been to the tune of what we'd like. This investment summit is coming after about a year where we had a stable government, all the fundamental factors are in place. The opportunity really is now, right? Some of these, when we look at these economies globally, whether it's Venezuela or Taiwan or all of these places, Vietnam, the time to get in was the right time. And, for Nepal, the time is now. Don't wait, don't look around. The speakers are here, experience is here, data is here, the government is open, we've got the investment board looking to interface directly with you. I think the time is to come in now, not wait anymore, fasten your seat belts, get on board, because, in 3 or 5 years, once people have come in, it's going to get harder, right? It'll get more competitive. So the time is to come in now. I think any challenges or any confusions, any discussions you have, there are people around here to answer. We've got the private sector here. One of the great learnings which, you may want to take away is, the experience shows that when you have a local partner, you're able to move much faster, you're able to have a much faster success. Just to share from a domestic investor standpoint, and I think Hariji referred to that, we are putting our money where our mouth is, right? So cement, we're investing more than $1 billion, $1.5 billion invested in cement in the last 3-4 years. Tourism, hotels is another $1.5 billion. Hydro is another $1.5 billion. So just in these 3 sectors, domestic investors currently, as we speak, have $5 billion of capital expenditure going on. $5 billion is not a small number by any sense. That is domestic investors putting all our money in these sectors. So our confidence is high, and we'd like to encourage you guys to come on board, join the sort of movement that we have in Nepal, benefit from our kind of economic landscape, from our economic trajectory. And I think there's no better time than now, no better opportunity than now. That's the message I'd like to pass on here. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank our speakers. I'd like to first of all thank Mr. Chen, who's our keynote speaker, his positive vibe from ADB, what ADB is sharing and so forth. Mr. Rana, who talked about FNCCI, how FNCCI has been working to lobby with the government. They're talking to B2B with their various chambers, they are bringing investors, they are interfacing everybody. Ashish shared his story of Unilever and, you know, very encouraging about how they are investing more and they see Unilever being a long-term player in Nepal's economic growth. Dr. Moto, obviously, as usual, firebrand, he talked about, you know, let's talk about the success. Let's not be afraid of competition. Let's not hide all those big balance sheet profit numbers and only talk about problems. Let's really talk about the successes because that's data, that's reality, right? So I think it was great to hear from him. Nirukt, we got him on record saying, look, this is a great environment, absolutely corruption-free, fantastic regulators. So, you know, we're going to hold him to that. And very encouraging to hear that he's brought in a number of investors, or Steinchart's brought a number of investors here. And hopefully Steinchart, being an ambassador of Nepal, will bring in that FDI investment. Mr. Nandlal Sharma talked about hydro and, you know, 11,000 crores, and I think that's INR currency. That's $2 billion in one single project, right? So that's showing the kind of commitment and the belief that these companies have in Nepal. Hariji obviously, you know, shared some great numbers, insights. He's a great researcher, you know, a knowledge-based expert. So we've heard from everybody about the great stories of the country. And I hope you take away some positive messages out of this. So I'd like to thank all the speakers once again. And thank you for the audience for hearing us, letting us share our story. And we'll continue this discussion after the session. Thank you so much. Thank you.